So welcome to the purpose of this book, David G. and David G. We're picking up tonight in the chapter 2 employers on page 143, the first full paragraph, which starts with if your man accepts your offer. But I think David wanted to just catch us up real quick to set the context of where we are.
Yep. Thank you, David. I'm David, a recovered alcoholic and drug addict. Yeah, just so this next paragraph that David's going to kick us off with makes sense. The prior paragraph is going to talk about, or it had talked about, that this definite course of action on page 142 in the bottom of the paragraph. We're talking about that definite course of action is the 12 steps. And then on the page 143, at the top of the page there, it's talking about physical treatment, which we know to be detox, and how important it is for an alcoholic, especially because they could need to be detoxed. I am not a doctor. I don't know what they need, but you can die from untreated alcohol or alcohol. You can die from poisoning and all kinds of stuff, nutritional values and all this other stuff. So go get a doctor, get physical treatment. And that's basically what this thing is talking about here, the 12 steps, along with some detox. And then now as we go forward, it's going to outline some stuff for us and how important it is once you get out of detox, what we need to do. So that's where we're at.
Okay. So let us jump in. Page 143 to employers. First full paragraph, about just about halfway down the page. Here we go. If your man accepts your offer, it should be pointed out that physical treatment is but a small part of the picture. Though you are providing him with the best possible medical attention, he should understand he must undergo a change of heart. To get over drinking will require a transformation of thought and attitude. We all had to place recovery above everything, for without recovery, we would have lost both home and business. Emily, anything? No? Okay. Go ahead, David.
Okay, so yeah, so the first thing here is I'm going to take this statement and turn to a question. Does my man accept my offer? My offer is to work with him out of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm using this chapter here as to sponsors as opposed to employers. I'm not rewriting the book. I'm just trying to make it relatable for myself and for anyone who will like to do that. But so with me, so does my man accept the offer? Meaning, was he willing to go to any lengths too and study this book? And David pointed out earlier on, we have an outline that we have on our website. You can use that if you choose. David and I have used it hundreds and hundreds of times. We've done conferences with them, and it's not the Bible, but it's definitely comes out of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then it talks about, it should be pointed out that physical treatment is but a small part of the picture. So get well physically, detox, get the proper vitamins there, let the doctors take care of you, go to rehab if that's necessary, if that's the case, the course that you need to take. And then it talks, so though you're providing him with the best possible medical attention, he should understand he must undergo a change of heart. Let's stop right there, because the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous is clear. We were talking about this right before our meeting. What do we offer here? We offer an entire psychic change, a spiritual experience. What does that look like? And I don't want to steal David's thunder because this is one of his favorite pages, but on page 20,
go ahead.
Are you going there?
Go ahead, bro.
No, go ahead. No, I'll stop. I'll let you go.
I'm gonna steal David's spot where he's going. So what is it saying in this chapter? Right? It's saying he should understand he must first of all, must. I'm gonna go back to David because he's gonna hammer these musts and requires, which are must. He must undergo a change of heart. So how we feel has to change. To get over drinking will require a transformation of thought, the stuff that's in my head, and attitudes, beliefs, the things that are in my gut. So what has to change here? Head, heart, and gut. Where have we read that before? And I know, David, I said we're bouncing around the book too much, but I must. Page 27, everybody go there. I'm not going to do my long form. I'm going to assume most of you guys know the story, and if you don't, hit me up on WhatsApp, and I'm happy to talk to you about it another time. Page 27, this is Dr. Jung talking to Roland Hazard, who says, there's only one way you're going to get better, Roland, and this is what it's going to look like. It's in the third paragraph, because Roland said to the doctor, is there no exception to basically me dying? And Dr. Jung says, yes, replied the doctor, there is. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. here and there once in a while, because this is before 12-step recovery existed. So it was only here and there once in a while. Alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences or life-saving, bigger than human events. To me, these occurrences are phenomena. It's like, I can't explain it. It's very rare. I can't give it to you. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements, but guys, here is the key. This is what you will experience, guaranteed, if you do all the work thoroughly and honestly. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding force of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. And not only are they going to be new, they're going to be better. This works 100% of the time. This is what the promise of the 12-step is. If what? You do all the work and you do it honestly. There is no shortcuts, right? Half measures avail us nothing. And sometimes half measures send me back out to drink and drug. So if you go back to 143, this bill is a direct callback to 27. I have to undergo a change of heart, right? Those are my emotions back in 27. To get over drinking will require transformation of thought. That's my ideas and attitude, right? And attitudes use the same words. It's the beliefs, it's the prejudices. Back to you, David.
Thank you. Great job. Yeah, I don't want to steal that from you. David does a wonderful job. We do that quite often when we do that every time we go to treatment centers, or every time, or even if we do a dual meeting and we're on the first step, we're going to talk about that. So the musts that David pointed out, yeah, there's like 159 of them or synonyms of them in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So please don't tell me there are no must, have tos, or had tos in the Big Book, because there is. And then as it goes on, as David pointed out, after the change of heart, it says to get over drinking will require a transformation of thought and attitude. And David gave us that description, what that looks like. But that is also what Dr. Carl Jung is describing as an entire psychic change. Silkworth describes it as a spiritual awakening, and they both mean the same exact thing. The maladie has been removed. The obsession is gone, and I can't break out and crave if I don't pick up a drink. So then here's my direction. We all had to place recovery above everything, for without recovery, we have lost both home and business. In a lot of cases, we already did that. And because I've lived two lives in one, I recouped a lot of that stuff, if not more than that. And also to remember that all things go before I drink. In other words, my ideas, my emotions, and attitudes, all those things are out the window. I'm not spiritually fit anymore. And then because I pick up a drink, all things go if I drink.
David, question for you. If I had to place recovery above everything, what do I put before my recovery?
God. That was the only thing I would change in that thing. Why is that so important? Because if I take credit for my sobriety, if I think that I'm doing something to keep myself sober, then I don't need a higher power, or I am my higher power. And that's a very dangerous place for me to be. So God first, sobriety second. And this is nowhere in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is just a great friend of David and mine. And it just makes sense. It lines up well for us. God first, sobriety second, my wife third, my children fourth, my career fifth. And if I keep it in a nice, tidy order like that, things work out well. And as I pointed out before many, many times, that's why I start my day on my knees, humbly asking God to direct my thinking, to come into my life. So like, and because of that, on the bottom of page one, what was it? 26, I think it is. Yeah, the 26. I know we said we weren't going to go back, but we're bottom of page 26 in the fourth paragraph of the page right before David said there says, but this man still lives and he's a free man. That's where I'll stop, because he doesn't need a bodyguard. I don't need a bodyguard. Why? Because I have a higher power in my life today. As long as I stay in fifth spiritual condition, I don't need to ever be concerned, because remember that if we had the time, I go to the 10 provinces. This happens automatically. It just does. And that's why I love the 10-step promises, because they've come true for me. But I have to live this stuff each and every day, and then the 10-step disciplines on the prior page. So let's just end there on that paragraph.
Perfect. Okay, moving on. Can you have every confidence in his ability to recover? Well, on the subject of confidence, can you, to the employer, right, can you adopt the attitude that so far as you are concerned, this will be a strictly personal matter? That is, alcoholic derelictions, the treatments about to be undertaken, will never be discussed without his consent? it might be well to have a long chat with him on his return.
I have one. Derelictions. It is faults and failures, shortcomings, or delinquencies.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rick, prior to the meeting, I said, if we don't have that definition, I think most people here will be able to relate to that. So I'm not slamming the group. I'm just saying, I should say, I can relate to that. That's what I'm saying. So can you have every confidence in his ability to recover? Recover, not recovering, like recover, doing the 12 steps, with a sponsor out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, because that's where the directions are. And if you do that, there's 100% success rate. 100%. You know, and even early on in Alcoholics Anonymous, they had a 75% rate, and most of those other 25% came back and did the work and got well too. In Cleveland, Ohio, they had a 90% success rate. You know, the bottom line is we don't have that kind of a success rate today. And again, I'm reading this chapter as sponsors, and answer the question there. While on the subject of confidence, can you adopt the attitude that so far as you're concerned, so me as a sponsor, this would be strictly a personal matter? Yeah, you bet your ass it's a personal matter. I absolutely care about you very, very, very much. You know, I'm not saying I like you. I've never said that. There's many guys I've worked with, and I said, dude, I do not like you, because they're always asking the one question that I can't stand. Why? Why do I gotta do this? Why? Stop asking why and start asking how. And then I also had another guy who I worked with for a long time, and I gave him the benefit of the doubt. And he's a recovered alcoholic today, dude, and he's phenomenal. He does big book studies, and he's just a great dude. But he used to always say to me, I know. Like I say something, he goes, yeah, I know. I said, dude, you got to take that out of your vocabulary. You're killing me, bro. You're just, if you know, why do you need me? Why do you need God? Why do you need this fellowship? Because you already know. And he took it out of his vocabulary, because the bottom line is I don't know. And those are the three hardest words for me to say. I love you are easy words to say. I said it when I was drinking. I can say it today, but I don't know are tough words for me to say. So yes, it's a personal matter. That his alcoholic dereliction treatment about to be undertaken will never be discussed without his consent. I don't broadcast anything. I just don't do that stuff. I keep it between him and I, you know, unless he gives me consent to go talk to my sponsor or David, people I give spiritual consent to talk about a matter, or I ask him to call them because I may not have experience with that stuff. And the last sentence there says it might be well to have a long chat with him on his return. My note says, got to have come to Jesus talk, guys. I just got, we need to, I need to remind him what alcoholism looks like, the malady, the obsession, and the craving. And I know, and that only a spiritual experience can conquer our illness. And if I point that out to him, then are you willing to do this work? And as we sit down and do this work, you need to commit to me as well as I will commit to you, and be willing to go to any lengths. And that has to go through the whole process here. And I got guys who've been sober 20, 30 plus years, like guys that are accountable to me, and I'm accountable to them. We do the shoulder to shoulder.
I think you said it all there, man. Let's keep going.
Okay.
Bottom paragraph of 143. To return to the subject matter of this book, it contains full suggestions by which the employee may solve his problem. To you, some of the ideas which it contains are novel. Perhaps you are not quite in sympathy with the approach we suggest. By no means do we offer it as the last word on the subject, but so far as we're concerned, it has worked with us. After all, are you not looking for results rather than methods? Whether your employee likes it or not, he will learn the grim truth about alcoholism. That won't hurt him a bit, even though he does not go for this remedy.
I have one. Grim is forbidding or uninviting.
He will learn the uninviting truth about alcoholism. Yeah, I'll jump in here real quick, David.
Okay.
So yeah, so this is, coming back now full circle. We've been on this sort of stretch of two employers for a few weeks, setting up all these sort of if then and making sort of threats and intervention style approaches to the employee. But it not only is the content sort of guiding the employer to take this firm position, but we're trying to educate him as well and give him perspective. So we're just saying, okay, let's just return to the subject matter of the book in the midst of all this. What's the whole point? What is the purpose of the book? The name of this study? Well, it contains suggestions by which, the employee may solve his problem. How is the employee going to solve his problem? Well, technically, he's not. He's going to get a new relationship with a higher power, and that power is going to solve his problem. But, sort of ipso facto, ergo, I do get my problem solved by letting a power greater than me into my life that solves it, right? Let's not split hairs on the language Bill's using, at least not in this case. I'll save that right for another time. So it's saying, yeah, we recognize, this might be new. Maybe the employer is not a spiritual guy, and maybe you don't dig it. You're not quite in sympathy with the approach. But this is most important here. By no means do we offer it as the last word on the subject, but as far as we're concerned, it's worked with us. So what that means is if you do what I did and you do what I do today, you too will get clean and sober and then recovered, and you're going to live happy, joyous, and free. You're going to be a better man, a better person than you were in the past. That was my experience. I've had sponsees sometimes that didn't want to take the steps the way that I go through them. And someone I sponsored for a long time, I said, do I have to do it this way? I have to do that. I said, well, I don't know, but with me, you have to do it this way. I only have one system. I said, I don't know how to do it another way. And this person said, well, could you ask your sponsor? And I said, no. I said, my sponsor is going to say, this is how I do it too, right? I mean, we're fundamental about how we come out of the book. I'm not talking about how you structure your fourth step, right? I'm not talking about if you say different prayers in the morning instead of 3 and 7 and 11, all that stuff. Those are just little tactical, mechanical things that we are encouraged to do as we see fit. What's not on the table is not working all the steps, not taking all the steps. What's not on the table is refusing to live in the disciplines of 10, 11, and 12. What's not on the table is not being of service and not being a part of the fellowship, whichever one you're in. We have many fellowships in this study, which I think is really cool. And then he goes on to say, after all, you're not looking for results rather than methods. Listen, guys, we don't have a monopoly on how to do this. Somebody comes into, one of my fellowship meetings. If I'm in an AA meeting and someone comes in and like, I don't like this. I don't like the stuff you guys are saying. This isn't for me. First of all, God bless. I hope that person gets clean and sober and happy through some other system, through church or non-12-step recovery methodology, or the spirituality figures out on his own. My suspicion is that if you're a real alcoholic or addict like I am, it's going to be tough for you to get recovered without, turning your life over to some sort of spiritual being, higher power, and cleaning up the wreckage of the past, and then taking a lifetime of service. That's just my belief system. I'm not sure a real alcoholic, real addict gets better without doing those things, but maybe I'm wrong. And what do I care, right? I just want people to be happy. And a lot of times, you guys, if you've been around, you've experienced this. People have come in and said, hell no, you guys are out of your minds. I don't like this God. I'm not doing these steps. I'm not taking any amends. And we were like, all right. Sometimes those people come back. Sometimes they come back days later. Sometimes they come back years later. I love it when they come back because usually they've been beaten into to the level of reasonableness, right, as the book talks about. And all of a sudden, they're willing to take these suggestions.
Yeah, so I'm just going to segue because David did a great job for me there. And right at the beginning of that first sentence, it says to return to the subject matter of this book. Again, like David said, that's the only way I know how to do this. I mean, if you can find another way to go do it, God bless. But I know people who've tried to do this before. So in place of AA, they went to church. And I'm not saying not to do that because I don't know. That's not my experience. My experience is dive deep into the 12 steps of recovery. But my experience today is to do church along with AA, not in place of AA, not in place of Cocaine Anonymous, DA, OA, whatever. But along with, the message gets stronger. It just has meat to it. So I will always return to the subject matter of this book, and that's what I'm going to work out of when I work with my guys. So then it says it contains full suggestion by which the employer may solve his problem. So let's talk about that because that's what I really want to focus on in this paragraph is solve his problem. So first of all, if we go back to page 45 in the first paragraph in We Agnostics, it's going to talk about the lack of power. That was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how are we going to find this power? And in Bill's magical way that he writes, he asks a question, he gives us the answer, and it says, well, that's exactly what this book is about. To help me find a power greater than myself, to seek that power, to have that in my life. And then it says, power greater than myself. That means we have a written book by which we believe is spiritual as well as moral. And it means, of course, we're going to talk about God. So I'm going to end at that paragraph and not continue on. But also, if we look on page 52 where the bedevilments are, on that page, and I think it's the third paragraph. Hold on here. Let me get my third paragraph. Yeah. So 52, third paragraph, and also in the same chapter to agnostics. And the reason why I'm referring back to that, because whatever my ideas are about a God of my childhood, a God of my understanding, I should have a God of no understanding for me anyways, because I need an infinite God. On page 52 in the third paragraph, he says, when we saw, and I circle the word saw, so this is through someone else's experience, and hopefully that's through a sponsor who's taking you through this work, solve their problems by a simple reliance upon a spirit of the universe, capital letters. We had to stop doubting the power of God. Our ideas did not work, but the God idea did. So all my old ideas, I got to get rid of them. And that still holds true today. So the last thing on this paragraph I wanted to talk about was right after the methods. Whether your employee likes it or not, he will learn the grim truth, and grim means like uninviting truth about alcoholism. No one wants to hear that necessarily. They think that somehow, someday, they'll beat the game. And that's why hopelessness is the key to success. And I know that sounds like a paradox. It's not. I need to be hopeless or I'm not going to do this work. And then it says that won't hurt him a bit, even though he does not go far for the remedy. The remedy is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and the power greater than themselves.
Hey, just heads up, we lost Rob. I don't know if he lost his internet or something. So
ouch.
I'll keep an eye out for him.
Okay.
Okay. So we're on 144, first full paragraph. We suggest you draw the book to the attention of the doctor who is to attend your patient during treatment. If the book is read the moment the patient is able, while acutely depressed, realization of his condition may come to him. I'm just going to read both of these since they're small.
Mhm.
We hope the doctor will tell the patient the truth about his condition, whatever that happens to be. When the man is presented with this volume, it's best that no one tell him he must abide by its suggestions. The man must decide for himself. Em?
I have one, abide. It is continue, stand, follow, or to confirm to or comply with.
Yeah, I've sat down with my primary doctor before because she knows I'm a recovered alcoholic and a drug addict, and we've had talks about some of her patients or family members that actually have met either at a meeting or through a phone call. And so I had suggested to her that she read the big book. I draw it to her attention that she reads it. And if you do that stuff there, the book is read in the moment the patient is able. So the patient needs to also read this textbook and study it because it is a textbook. And while acutely depressed, which is a great place to be because we're talking about hopelessness again. So, and I'm just going to do, I know David and I said we're not going to bounce back, but I just want to go to page 8 in Bill's story to what hopelessness, one of my favorite descriptions of hopelessness is in the big book. Bill's story, page 8. This is at his bottom. It says, no words can tell the loneliness and despair I found in the bitter morass, self-pity, quicksand stretched all around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol is my master. That is the sense of hopelessness that I must have. So have to have the desperation of the drowning man.
So just a couple of things here. It talks about drawing the book to the attention of the doctor. And then, and elsewhere in the book talks about, get the doctor to deliver this message when someone's inpatient, that type of thing. Doctor maybe can give him the book. We'll hope the doctor would tell the patient the truth about his condition, whatever that happens to be. Maybe the doctor's going to say you're a hopeless variety of alcoholic. Maybe he's going to say, hey, you're hitting it a little hard, but you ought to cut it out, hard drinker. Or they might say, hey, you tied one too many times, but you don't have a history. The doctor could diagnose him any of those different types of alcoholics. So whatever the truth is going to be. But here's an experience I had this morning. So I'm going to prepare you guys for this mental image. I had to go for a colonoscopy this morning. Okay. So now that the mental image has passed you by, I'm sitting there And the nurse is checking me in, and she's, going through all my history and family and diseases and stuff. And she says, any recreational drug use? I said, no, I'm sober for 20 years. She says, what's that? I said, sober for 20 years. So former user. I said, yeah, former user. It's been 20 years, almost 21. Okay. And then more quiet. She said, do you use alcohol? I said, no, I've been sober 20 years. She said, not even a little? I said, not even a little. This is a nurse, guys, and not a new nurse. I mean, I'm assuming she's been, based on her age, she's probably been in nursing 20 years, right? The medical profession has different understandings, and I'm not going to say right, better, or worse, just different understanding of what alcoholism and what addiction is than this book here. And in some ways, there's some symmetries, right? But our definition, how we qualify an alcoholic, if you remember AA, doesn't have to do with how the doctor characterizes or diagnoses, right? David takes us back there all the time. I'm not going to go there, but the top of 44, right? The first paragraph of We Agnostics, it asks 2 questions. That's how we qualify alcoholics. When you stop drinking, can you stay stopped, right? That's the mental obsession. When you start drinking, can you control the amount that you drink? That's the physical allergy. And we say, if you got those problems, we consider you a real alcoholic, and you're going to need a spiritual experience to get better. That's not how doctors look at it, and that's okay. So again, this is 1939, when nobody understood alcoholism or addiction except for a very small number of people, including like Dr. Silkworth. So when you went and talked to a doctor about what we thought alcoholism looked like, they thought we were out of our minds. Remember, Dr. Silkworth didn't even want his name in this book at the beginning because what he was proposing was so radical. Today, there's a much greater understanding in the medical community of what alcoholism and addiction is, but their understanding may not be the same as ours, and that's okay. So I don't know that today you need to ask a doctor to give somebody a book. What happens, and we've talked about this a lot, David and I have had these experiences of taking alcoholics in bad shapes to the ER because we're afraid they're going to die if they go to the DTs, and I don't want a guy dying in my home or in my car, right? Take him to the ER where he can get the help that he needs. And what I want is for the doctor, if, with the permission of the alcoholic, that someone's allowed to call me the next day and say, okay, you can come see this guy again, right? That's what I really want from the doctor, because try him out, make sure he doesn't die. You deal with the DTs, and then I want to know when I can start taking him through the work, or at least make the offer, right? And then the other thing here in these 2 little paragraphs, when the man is presented with this volume, it's best that no one tell him he must abide by its suggestions. The man must decide for himself. And there's a lot of decisions that are talked about in the book, right? In the how it works, talks about standing at the turning point. And then page 27 is my favorite sort of page or series of pages to talk about, but my favorite paragraph is the bottom of page 25. And I'm just going to go there. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's just about making a decision, right? If very bottom paragraph 25, if you were as seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there's no middle of the road solution, right? And there's a whole bunch of other stuff, but it says there's 2 alternatives. One's to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, and the other is to accept spiritual help. Those are my alternatives. I don't know how much decision and choice there is in there for the alcoholic or addict, but to whatever extent it exists, hopefully I take the spiritual help, right?
So let me add just one thing, and it's in the back of our big book in Alcoholics Anonymous, and if you've never read it, it's very interesting history, the medical view of AA. So there's 6 doctors that are on these 2 pages here. And if we go to page 572, at least in the 3rd edition, I really don't know where it's in the 4th edition because I have a study guide, so I don't have that part of the book. But anyways, let me just read just one paragraph. And this is a doctor who was informed. All these doctors actually were informed, but this doctor, and this is prior to the AMA saying this is the disease of alcoholism. So Dr. W.W. Bauer, broadcasting under the auspices of the American Medical Association in 1946 over the NBC network, said in part, Alcoholics Anonymous are no crusaders, not a temperance society. They know that they must never drink. They help others with similar problems. In this atmosphere of alcoholic often overcomes his excessive concentration upon himself. The doctor understands that we have this this excessive concentration upon ourselves. That's our problem. Then it says, learning to depend upon a higher power and absorb himself in his work with other alcoholics. He remains sober day by day. The days add up to weeks, the weeks into months, and then years. So I love like looking at history like that. And somebody pointed that out to a meeting years ago to me, and I had that highlighted, and it just, my little pea brain kicked it off again today. This is the doctor, and the doctors who are armed with the facts about this disease are able to be a little bit more helpful. But like to David's point, I bet you a whole lot of them are not. I bet you a whole lot of nurses and doctors are not. We've heard this before. Not even a little bit. Not even like a mimosa or something on a vacation. Nope, not even a little
New Year's
bit.
Eve champagne
No.
Nothing.
No, abstinence, baby. Go ahead.
Okay. Yep. So let's keep going. 144. Third paragraph. You are betting, of course, that your changed attitude, so the employer's changed attitude, plus the contents of this book will turn the trick. In some cases it will, and in others it may not. But we think that if you persevere, the percentage of successes will gratify you. As our work spreads and our numbers increase, we hope your employees may be put in personal contact with some of us. Meanwhile, we're sure a great deal can be accomplished by the use of this book alone, of the book alone.
I have one, persevere. It's to continue in spite of obstacles or discouragement or keep at.
Thank you, Emily.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
so 144, third paragraph. You're betting, of course, that your changed attitude. So if I'm reading this as the sponsor, yes, I've had a changed attitude. That's a relationship, personal relationship with God, and the contents of this book, which I am so confident, 100% confident, will turn the trick. That has been my experience over and over again. And I pointed out the success rate early in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's in the forward of the second edition if you want to look at that in the book. And then in Akron with Clarence Schneider, they had a 90 to 95% rate. I can't remember what it was. That's the kind of success rate that we can. And the reason why we probably don't have that, and I'm just going to say it, and I know it doesn't relate to anyone here, it's piss poor sponsorship. It's helping someone figure out what clothes to wear to the dance or what girl to date. I have no idea who you're supposed to date or what clothes you're supposed to wear to the dance. I don't know, but I do know how to get you to God, and I know how to do it in a rapid manner, so you don't have to suffer anymore. You can get the freedom from the bondage itself that these steps promise you that you can have. So I'm not saying I don't lighten up and have a great relationship and personal relationship with people, but right in the beginning, we got to rush through this thing. The window of opportunity shut quickly. So. And then it says, but we think that we are persevere. The percentage of success will gratify you. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a joke, but all the hundreds and hundreds of people that I've worked with, I have 100% success rate. I've stayed sober. A lot of them have too, though. A lot of them. Not because of me, because of the context of this book, because they're actually willing to go to any lengths and still are today. And I run into these people, and I sponsor more than double digits of those people today, and I have a great relationship with them. And I watch them have their families back in their lives and get careers and get a bank account and all these little wonderful things that do take place for us. And as our work spreads and our numbers increase, that's our hope here. We hope your employees may be put into personal contact with some of us. So again, if my job as a sponsor is to introduce him to my friends, take him to the meetings, get him acquainted with other people who are either relate to that they're suffering from the same illness as I am. I'm not suffering any longer, but so that they can be, so they want to come back. This is supposed to be an attraction. We ourselves in Alcoholics Anonymous inside the rooms should be promoting this. That is the proper way to promote Alcoholics Anonymous inside the rooms, make this inviting to other people. Then it says, meanwhile, we are such a great deal that we can be accomplished by the use of the book alone. So, yeah, I mean, when the people go off to war, back in World Wars, they took the big book with them, and there was no meaning necessarily. You could certainly work these steps out of the book on your own if you wanted to, and you could surely have the experience that the book promises that you can have. But we don't necessarily have that today. There's meetings everywhere and 24/7, as you know, here on Zoom, so we can get a sponsor. And I prefer to have a big book sponsor, someone armed with the facts about themselves. And then I can be accountable to that person, meaning that when I say I have an appointment with them, I show up for that appointment. When I get my sponsor on Fridays, I show up on the time. I don't make up excuses. I mean, sometimes it can't be avoided for him or I, but we let each other know well ahead of time. And I don't make a habit out of it either, because I know my patterns can be like, that's not so important. No, it's very important that I sit down eyeball to eyeball with my sponsor. So that's all I got.
So I'll just underscore a couple of points here real quick. As our work spreads and our numbers increase, we hope your employees may be put in personal contact with some of us. We should, in this day and age, in the 80 plus years Alcoholics Anonymous has been around, and the many decades the other anonymous fellowships have been around, there ought to be enough people out there that this vision and hope has come true. And sadly, there's not. AA is the largest 12-step fellowship because it's the oldest, right? I mean, it's pretty easy to draw that conclusion. 2 million people, and it's been plateaued at 2 million for a couple of decades. There's about 800 million people that are alcoholics or addicted to something on this planet, about 10% of the 8 billion people. So if we've got 2 million in AA, and let's say all the rest of the fellowships are another 2 million, which probably isn't even that high, we are woefully undershooting the mark of how we need to be available so that we can show up and help people in need. And I'm not going to do it tonight, but when I give leads, I often talk about this, how easy it is for us to scale and to carry the message effectively, and how that message goes on down the line. And I concur with what David said. As a whole, our fellowships, we don't sponsor well, right? The reason for why don't we have more recovered members in all of our fellowships is that collectively we're not sponsoring adequately, right? We're not carrying the message enough in the right way out of this book. And that's the responsibility of all of us and the people that we mentor, right? And when people are coming up or saying things in meetings in our fellowships that have the first tradition, and they are talking about things that are disunifying, so I feel like it's my obligation outside the meeting, not the grandstand in the meeting, but I talk to them after the meeting and say, hey man, this is a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. The things that you are saying have nothing to do with our program recovery. You might kill somebody, and I've given that message a number of times. Opinions kill, right? This is not about opinions. This is about a proven, guaranteed set of steps and a design for living that saves lives. We're not the results business. David says it all the time. We can't be. How can I produce results? God produces results. But we are in the life-saving business, right? We're kind of like paramedics. We got to get people to the higher power, which when it comes to health matters is a doctor, so that they can perform their miracles. But we got to get them there. We got to transport them in a sense, right? And I had another point, but who knows what it was, so let's move on. Oh, I was going to say, a great deal can be accomplished by the use of the book alone. Man, hats off. If someone's new in recovery and you can read this book and you can understand it and work it, you're way either less sick than me or way smarter, or maybe both. Because when I came in, and I'm a pretty sharp guy, I was like this, right? Like upside down, back and forth. I couldn't understand anything in this book because my brain didn't want to believe that this was my problem. And I needed people, to explain it to me. This is what the first step means. This is what it means to be powerless. And it's got 2 parts. And this is what it means to be unmanageable. It's a spiritual malady. And here's what it means. And here's what page 27 means. And that's what the 12 steps going to look like. I needed like C-Spot Run, Fun with Dick and Jane, AA for dummies. I needed that interpretation. But God bless. I'm always amazed when I think like there was some guy who was like the first person in the state of Montana to have an actual big book. And whether someone brought it to him or he got it in the mail, there's some human being like in every state that had their first book and started to figure this stuff out 80 plus years ago. How mind-blowing is that? We're so spoiled today. 24/7. We can jump on a meeting, and hopefully a decent meeting, but how many amazing speakers that we know, right? The Howards and Kathys and Youngs and Purdy's and Terry's and Chris R. and Myers R. and Katie P. and Charlie P. Paige, right? Oh my God, right? All these amazing people, Howard and Kathy, I can't remember to mention that. So many people that we've gotten, like, it's an embarrassment of riches of people who understand this book and can break it down and make it so simple for us. Wasn't the case if you were living in Butte, Montana in 1940, right? You didn't have that. But the most sober guy in 12-step recovery in the world was Bill Wilson, and he had 5 years. I wonder how many people are in this meeting that've got 15, 20 years, right? I know a bunch of you guys are double-digit people, right? 5 years was Bill Wilson in 1940, right? When he had to help the first person in Butte. Well, I don't know how AA got started in Butte. I'm just using that as an example. Okay, keeping on. Bottom of 144. On your employee's return, talk with him. Ask him if he thinks he has the answer. If he feels free to discuss his problems with you, if he knows you understand and will not be upset by anything he wishes to say, he will probably be off to a fast start. Yeah, I'm going to read the next one too. In this connection, can you remain undisturbed if the man proceeds to tell you shocking things? He may, for example, reveal that he has padded his expense account or that he's planned to take your best customers away from you. In fact, he may say almost anything if he's accepted our solution, which, as you know, demands rigorous honesty. Can you charge this off as you would a bad account and start fresh with him? If he owes you money, you may wish to make terms. Emily, anything? No? Go ahead, David.
Okay, so I know we said it before. I restate it again. I got to bounce just for the simple reason that that first paragraph says on our employee's return. So returning from coming back to work, or in our case, coming back to meetings, talk with him. Bill's going to give a couple of descriptions in the Big Book on Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm a literal guy. I'm an enthusiast about the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And Daniel and I just started this work. Daniel's going to do his 5th step on Friday. I hope you don't mind me saying that. And I'm real proud of the honest and thoroughness that he's doing here with it. But I followed the directions in this book, and it's on page, working with others. Go to page 90 in the very first paragraph. Now, I studied that chapter many times, but I didn't really do everything that is said. And I'm not saying that I jinxed it into place or it was good luck because I did it. The experience that Daniel and I had, the time just stopped. It was a wonderful experience to have with a good friend of mine I've known for years and years and years. So page 90, first paragraph. When you discover a prospect. So when I made the approach, or he made the approach with me this time for Alcoholics Anonymous, find out all you can about him. That's a long talk. So I sat down and found out all I could about him. We went to a great breakfast. It was at lunchtime, but we both had breakfast, and then we found out all I could about him. And then we turned our thoughts to the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then another reference to a long talk is on page 75, and I think it's the first paragraph. Yeah, on our 5th step, if I'm not correct, or maybe it's, I don't know. But it's talking about be prepared for a long talk. So I don't have exactly written down the book, but it says, now that we've done this inventory, be prepared for a long talk. So when the sponsee finishes up his 4th step, they make the appointment to sit down with the 5th step, be prepared for a long talk, because I got to be honest and thorough about everything. And as the book is stating here, and the honor in the whole matter here is in the second paragraph that David read, is in his connection, back to 145 in the very first paragraph, in this connection, can you remain undisturbed if the man proceeds to tell you shocking things? That's an honor. That is a real honor, because most of the time I'll be able to relate to it. All the craziness, all the sick shit that I pulled off because I was so in depth of this illness that I have. And he may be, for example, reveal that he's been padding an expense account. So the only thing I'm going to add to that is, okay, back to is if I'm looking at this employers, if he owes money, he should want to pay it back. So we had that discussion too, and we've had this discussion here on the Zoom meeting many times too. You know, if you owe money to people, and Bill's going to give us 9 examples in the 9th step about all these how to go out and make amends to certain people. One of us, we owe money, and the deal is if I got a job, all of a sudden I got a little money in my bank, but I owe people money. I'm going out buying Jordans. Not my money to buy those Jordans. That guy just bought me Jordans with his money. That is dishonest as all hell. I got to pay that money back before I get those Jordans. You know, we got to work out the best deal possible with that other individual. So And then the promise here in the middle of that paragraph on page 145 in the first paragraph, it says, in fact, he may say almost anything, but he has accepted our solution, which, as you know, demands rigorous honesty. That's a pretty darn good promise to know that he's accepted, conceded it in his innermost self, that he's a real alcoholic and he wants to do this work. Man, when I see that and the light goes on his eyes, let's get busy and do this work.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about a couple of things. One was, it's amazing how, as we are recovering, and even some people who are, I'm going to say, fairly recovered, how much we still want to split hairs about things that are black and white. I was working with a sponsee and I said, let's look at all your financial amends. How much money do you owe? And they said, well, does that include hospital bills? And I thought, why is that any different? Right? Are we just going to start naming institutions? Like, does that include bank fees? Does that include what I have on my credit cards? Like, no, there's no differentiation here. I either owe money or I don't. Right? And me trying to subdivide it or deprioritize it doesn't feel rigorously honest, right? The only other thing is, I'll just mention, in the spirit of the second paragraph, it's a pretty big ask here to ask the employer to really sort of just let these things go, to hear these, what might be painful, damaging things this employee has done to say mind business as the employer, and just sort of let them go or be at peace with them. That's a lot to ask. That's assuming that the employer is a fairly spiritually fit person in their own right. And, I think the supposition is for this entire chapter is that the employer is doing their best to take a spiritual approach to this. But just like the chapter of the family, family afterward, and the chapter of the wives, it's a lot to ask here to just sort of accept that, the employee was stealing from you and planned to steal your customers and things like that. I'm not saying Bill's wrong for writing it. I'm just recognizing that's tough. Moving on. Second paragraph, 145. If he speaks of his home situation, you can undoubtedly make helpful suggestions. Can he talk frankly with you so long as he does not bear business tales or criticize his associates? With this kind of employee, such an attitude will command undying loyalty.
Nothing.
No. Okay. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, and in that long talk, he's going to speak of his home situation. If I'm looking at this from a sponsor to sponsee relationship, you can undoubtedly make helpful suggestions. And I just try to say, how does my relationship evolve? Well, first of all relationships evolve with God in mind first. That's how I ended up having a healthy, loving, caring, thoughtful, put my wife's common welfare before my own relationship. Because I had to develop that relationship with God first, and that's what the steps are designed to do, and living in the daily disciplines, the vital daily disciplines of 10, 11, and 12. And then sharing that with people that I work with. Like when we have, one of my sponsees was over here last Saturday, and she mentioned that she had not argued for 2 weeks with her wife. And I said, when you stop counting the days, how many days you haven't argued with your wife, that's when you know you're better. And I just say, because I remember doing that. Like, we can have a disagreement. The book is clear on having disagreements, but I don't need this. I don't want to be in argument with them. Like, when these things are getting heated, we pause when agitated or doubtful. And that comes long before anger and rage. The book gives us a lot of directions on that kind of stuff. I didn't minimize the fact that, yeah, that was great. For 2 weeks, you didn't. I was joking around wholeheartedly, and she got it. So, but back to the text here. Can he talk frankly with you so long as he does not bear business tales or criticize his associates? So no gossip. Let's not do that. With this kind of employee, such an attitude will command an undying loyalty. Well, again, what an honor. It's going to be an honor when I sit down and do a fifth step with someone. It just is. I just can't tell you when that person can look the world in the eye, when they can see, experience God's love in their life, walking shoulders, hand in hand with their creator. That's the experience that you get from the fifth step. So that's all I got there.
Yeah, I think you did a nice job of pointing out that little paragraph actually sits better, sort of works better as the sponsor versus the employer. Because I don't know, can an employer undoubtedly make helpful situations about a home situation that an alcoholic is torn to shreds? I don't know. I don't know. That feels like a bit of a stretch, but I bet a sponsor could, you know? So
And
it's good.
let me just say one more little thing.
Yeah,
so
please.
if I go back to page 75 in the third paragraph, and this is the direction that I'm supposed to have when I get home after I did my fifth step with my sponsor. Returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, and that's literal. Carefully reviewing what we have done. We thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know him better. Why is that so important? Because I just spent 3 hours talking about myself. That's why. And you know what I found out about myself? I found out truth. And where there's truth, there's God. This is a brand new relationship I just developed with God by being truthful with myself, with another human being, and with God. So now I have this gratitude, this attitude of gratitude, that I know God better today. And I don't know, man. I love the fact that these results transition for everybody.
Mm-hmm. All right, powerful paragraph coming up here. The greatest enemies of us alcoholics are resentment, jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear. Wherever men are gathered together in business, there will be rivalries, and arising out of these, a certain amount of office politics. Sometimes we alcoholics have an idea that people are trying to pull us down. Often, this is not so at all. But sometimes our drinking will be used politically. Emily? No? Okay.
Well, so yeah, this is a negative promise, or this is a negative experience for
Right.
all of us. The greatest enemies of us alcoholics, so us, circle that, are resentment, jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear. And then I think it's on page 151, the second paragraph, we draw the 4 horsemen. So that's another way to look at the bedevilments, and the bedevilments from page 52 in the second paragraph is another way to talk about what drives me. And on page 62, also the same thing. So I have all these things against me, and what they all have in common, they're all based on self. And I have to be rid of self, because self will kill me, and I don't have the power to do that. So then it says, wherever men are gathered together in business, so there will be rivalries, and arising out of these, a certain amount of office politics. I don't get caught up in other people's drama. That is not my business. Daniel and I were talking about the other day. It's real easy to do, especially when it's personal to me. But I know I can find other people who've had this experience if I would just humble myself and make that phone call, or get together over a cup of coffee and have that. How did you get through that? And the first thing I'm going to say is pray, or I'm going to ask you, did you pray? And I'll still never forget the day I went over to my sponsor's house, and I caused some issues in my life. I don't remember what they were necessarily, but he goes, "Where's God in all this?" It's like, oh, I never even considered about praying. I mean, I honestly never considered praying. And no wonder I was in such a mess. When I incorporated the power of God into my life, my whole attitude and outlook upon life started to change. That is not of my doing. That comes through me, not of me. And the last little thing, and it says there, rivalries and arising out of these, a certain amount of office politics. Sometimes we alcoholics have an idea that people are trying to pull us down. What I got to remember is I have a disease of perception. Everybody's not out to get me every day. Like, okay, who gets pissed off in traffic because somebody cut you off or didn't use their turn signal? Did they wake up that morning and went, you know what, Emily, I'm going to get you. I've been waiting for you all night. I hardly slept a wink. But when I get up in the morning, when you leave at 6 o'clock, I'm going to be there at 5:55 waiting on that street corner, cut you off. I'm going to do it. No, nobody does that. It's not about me. I'm so self-absorbed. I have to understand. I drive a truck and I pull a trailer. I let people come in and out because I'm hoping in return a good deed will be done to me later on when I'm driving in the city of Chicago. Right, RJ? He drives a 53-footer, so he's got a little bit more behind him than I do. So it's just about treating people the way I want to be treated. And don't get caught up other people's drama. It's none of my business.
So, powerful sentence here. The greatest enemies of us alcoholics. It could say this. The greatest enemies of us alcoholics are Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, Pinot Grigio, Miller Lite, right? It doesn't say that, guys. It says the greatest enemies of us alcoholics are resentment, jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear. And where did we really start to dig into those? Back on pages 64 through 67, right? And I'm not going to take us back there because literally I could read those, what is it, 4 pages, right? And it's all just chock full of me understanding, learning for the first time who I really am, who I really was. And who was I? I was a guy riddled with resentment the most, but also plenty of jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear, right? This is the stuff that makes up my original 4-step inventory. And this is the stuff that litters my 10th and 11th step inventory still today, right? That even on my best days, when I'm sharpening all my tools and I'm being a part of and I'm living a really fit spiritual life, I don't care how great a day, how much a child of God I'm doing, I have at least one moment, and it might be fleeting and passing, but I at least have one moment where I'm resentful, jealous, envious, frustrated, or fearful. I'm a human being, guys, right? These things don't go away. What happens is that thanks to recovery, these things get minimized, and I develop a set of tools that I can depend on to make sure they don't get blown way out of proportion. You know what? A sponsee was asking me one time, how frequently do I if I'm doing a 10-step, how frequently do I take it to somebody, take it to my sponsor or take it to David or one of my other running buddies? I say not that frequently, because most of the time what happens when I catch myself getting jealous or petty or resentful, I have a pause in my head and I can say, I'm like, dude, just knock it off. I can't tell you how many times a day I say that to myself in my head. Dude, just knock it off. Dude, just chill out. Dude, just calm down. Like, you're not going to think this thought. You're not going to behave that way. You're sure as hell not going to say that thing. Move on. And it's glorious because I move on. What I do is, if I'm unable, if I say, dude, don't flip and say that, and then I end up saying it, then I got to tell on myself. Then I really need to discuss it. Or if I notice the same pattern, like, one of my business partners, if I'm getting pissed at him, then there's something that's sitting in there that I'm not able to dude my way out of. And I need to formally do a 10-step and talk to somebody about it. I said, it could be my sponsor. There's a couple of doors down. Most of the time when I have a 10-step stuff I need to talk about, I actually just bring it to David, because David's in my life, much more closely than my sponsor is. And by the way, my sponsor is totally okay with that. The deal is, don't hide anything from my sponsor, but take something to whoever I want. I've taken 10-step stuff to sponsees. Why not? Because maybe they saw me in my bad behavior. We're shoulder to shoulder. There's no hierarchy here. I'm not better, smarter, more powerful than the guys that I sponsor, right? It just doesn't work that way. And then I just want to say here too, so sometimes we alcoholics have an idea. So we have an idea. Woo, let's not have too many ideas, right? We have an idea that people are trying to pull us down. Often this is not so at all. David made a point. People are not out to get us. People aren't thinking about us. But I'm going to read one line, though, back on 66. I'm just going to reiterate this. And I'm just going to read it. Don't even look for it. In that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, had power to actually kill. So whether somebody's talking smack about me in the office for real, or whether I think they are, it has the same weight and gravity when I'm not spiritually fit. It doesn't matter if it's true or false, right? I have to think about it the same way, which is not to get all hot and bothered about it. Period. Right? I can't control if somebody's gossiping, but I can get out of my head if I'm making up stories about people gossiping. All right, top of the hour, perfect place to stop. Let me kill the recording.